Brent Russell, owner of Tarrant County Pest Control, and this is D1. So we've been through two other categories. The first category that we went through was laws and regulations, and we talked a lot about the laws behind the pest control industry and how to get your license and those kind of things. Section 2 B was labels, and we just got done talking a whole lot about labels and label comprehension and understanding those labels. And now we are going to move into D, or Section 3, which is pesticide safety. And so we're going to talk about some pesticide safety now. So before you apply pesticides, there's a lot that you want to think about. You want to think about some things like your PPE, your personal protective equipment. Before you even buy a pesticide or you use it, you're going to want to think about what kind of personal protective equipment am I going to need. For instance, in my truck, I always carry gloves. I have a couple different kind of gloves that I carry. I carry these big, heavy-duty gloves that you can use over and over again. And then I carry a box of these disposable gloves, and these are real nice. You can wear those and then just pull them off and throw them away. So, and also you're going to want to have some kind of eye protection. Now, these glasses will obviously supply some kind of a protection on my eyes if something were to splash up on me, but they're not really chemical resistant goggles. Like, for instance, these are made to go over my glasses. You can see here how they have this and the sides on them so that it goes over your glasses and it protects from things splashing and getting into your face. Okay? Then there's also, if you don't need to wear glasses, sometimes you just maybe need them for reading or whatever. These are also chemical resistant goggles here, and they just look like sunglasses. But they're made to fit to go around your face so that things can't splash over or get onto you like that. Okay, so you want to think about that. That's just some really basic stuff. Is just having some goggles and some gloves, on your truck at all times. But you have to think, put a little bit more thought into it, and what kind of pesticide that you're using. If the job calls for something that is much more toxic, then you might need a respirator. And then you have to look at that label and see what kind of respirator that you need as well. Now, I don't carry any of those kind of chemicals on my truck. If I did, I would also make sure I read those labels real careful, and because some of them even call for chemical resistant suits, the whole suit that you might have to wear with the hood and a respirator and the whole thing. So it's real important that before you start a job that you read the labels, you understand how toxic it is, and just what type of personal protective equipment that you're going to need to do that job. Something else that you want to think about is before you do a pest control job, you want to kind of plan on thinking about what happens if something goes wrong. And in that case, you're going to want what's known as a spill kit, in case you were mixing and you get some chemical on the ground or something. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the spill kit in detail a little bit later. But that's something else that you're going to want to have is a chemical spill kit on your truck with you in case something goes wrong. And so there again, you want to think about that and what kind of chemicals you have and what it's going to take in case you do have an accident. You always want to have some extra clothes on the truck. It's not uncommon to get pesticide on you if something goes wrong. With the spray rig that's in the back of this truck, they're under high pressure, and if one of those hoses breaks, you could get covered in pesticide. I have been, for instance, it's possible if you were, say, mixing one of these jugs, I'll give you an example. Say you're mixing one of these jugs and you're shaking this jug real hard to mix it, and if one of these caps came off, that stuff can come up, get on your clothes, get in your face and your eyes. So it's very important that you've got gloves and eye protection and clothes that you can change if you have to. So if something gets on you, it's always a good idea to keep an extra set of clothes in your vehicle. You also want to think about how you're going to transport the pesticides. Now, the best way to transport pesticides are in the back of a truck. In my truck, you can see I've got these I got a lock box I can put my chemicals in, and then close that and lock it shut. So that way it's not in the truck, it's in the back, and it's locked. Now that's really important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail a little bit later. But you want to make sure that it's contained. Let's say that you have an accident and you go off the road and down through a ditch. Well, if you had pesticide containers like this just sitting in the back of the truck, they could go flying out and they can bust open. So it's not safe and it's not legal. You couldn't haul pesticides like that just in the back of the truck. So what you'd want to do is put them and lock them up. Now, my other truck had a toolbox that went across the front, just your standard toolbox on a pickup. That's great. Is anything that they can be in there, be safe, and be locked will hold those pesticides safely. So you'll never want to carry pesticides like that in the back of a truck. So that's something to think about. And depending on how dangerous that pesticide is, there again, it might require other kinds of storage to be transported. Another thing that you want to think about before you apply pesticides is you want to think about the weather. Is it raining? Is it windy? These things all affect on when and where and what you can treat for. So these are all some of the things that before you even get started applying, you want to think about, have some of those things in mind before you get started. Okay, so you want to think ahead. Think ahead before you buy, before you store, before you move, or before you apply pesticides. Okay? So before you apply pesticides, make sure that you read the label and you have a really good comprehension of what it says. Now I know that we just went through 2 hours of talking about labels and label comprehension. And so I know that you understand labels, but what you want to do is each pesticide, here, I'm going to give you an example. Here's Tarrant, okay? It's got a label on the back here. Here's, this pesticide is Masterline, and once again, Masterline has this label that's mounted on the front. So what I want to show you about this is that this label, you can take it and peel it off. Okay, it comes off like this, and like that. Now, believe it or not, this is the whole label, and let's see, it's got 45, 50, what is it? 55 pages to this label. Look at that. And look how small it is, right? I mean, I could just put that right in my pocket and carry it with me. So I can put that in my pocket or my back pocket or carry it around. And you may be saying to yourself, well, what difference does it make if I have the label that came off of the jug, or if I can pull it up online. Well, okay, first of all, it's the same label, so if you can pull it up online and look at it, that's great. But if you're learning a label and it's the first time that you're using this product, I would suggest that you pull these little labels off, because even after you've pulled this label off, on the other side, this bottle is still labeled. So that's, you don't have to have this label on that jug. You can, as long as it's labeled and it clearly says on there that this is Tarrant SC, that's not a problem. So once I pull this label, this off, and that, now I can carry this around with me, and it makes it a lot easier if I'm out and I'm trying to think about this pesticide and trying to think of what I can use or what I cannot use on it. If I'm out in the field and I've got this in my pocket, I can just pull it out, and if I've been reading it and I've been carrying it with me, I've familiarized myself and I'll know my way through it. I'll know where to go to look for certain things. And it makes it sometimes easier than finding it on your cell phone. If you're in a bad cell area and you're not getting good connection, or you don't have to sit there and pull up and go online and then try to find the label and wait for it to download. If you've got the label with you, it just makes it a lot easier. Makes it easier to study. So I can carry these labels with me, and whenever I'm in a situation where I'm bored or I've got nothing to do, I can pull it out and just start reading through it and studying it. And I want to know everything about it. I want to know where I can use it, when I can use it, what I can use it on. I want to know what kind of personal protective equipment is required, what are the re-entry intervals. I want to know all of that really well, and that's going to help me to know where I can apply this, when I can apply it, what I can use it on, and be able to do it in a safe and a professional manner. So once again, I highly recommend pull these little labels off, keep them. When I first got into the business, every pesticide I used, I would pull these labels off, and I had a bunch of them around all the time. I was read them till I knew them really well. But something else is every year they come out with new labels. So you want to make sure that you get up-to-date labels, and that's another reason I like to pull them off of these jugs, because as you buy it, it depends on the label at the time with this pesticide. Say I bought this pesticide today, and then I have this pesticide for, maybe say it takes me a month to use it up. But now if they come out with a new label on it and they've changed something on that label and I don't know it yet, well, if I have the old label, I go by the label that when I bought it. Now when I buy a new pesticide and if they've changed it, I want to make sure that I know what that change is, and so that I can make sure that I'm following the law. Okay? So I carry these labels around with me all the time so that I can learn them and be able to be very knowledgeable on what I can or cannot do with them. Okay. Be ready when something goes wrong. You want to think ahead and be prepared for that. Just be prepared that something will go wrong, and plan on it. That way when something happens, you're ready for it. You're prepared. Okay? You want to think about things like a first aid kit. Just a little simple thing, like if you get a cut on your finger or something, you might just need to be able to clean that up and put a Band-Aid on it. Or you might need to have some rinse to be able to rinse your eye. Okay, so on the truck, I always carry a jug of water, okay? And so with this water, if we get some pesticide on our skin or in my eye or on the back of my neck or my hands, of course I can rinse off. And I got soap, so I have soap and water, and I got clean towels. We've always carry lots of towels and soap and water on the truck, so that anytime that we're done cleaning, or especially if something happens, we're able to be able to clean off. Sometimes if you get it in your eye, it requires for you to be able to rinse that eye for a long time. So if you're on a location where you don't have water, or if you can't get to a hose or a sink, then we always carry plenty of water with us to be able to, for rinsing and washing and for those purposes. know how to find the 800 number on the back around on these labels. All these labels, we talked about this on labels in that section, that there's an 800 number there to the pesticide safety hotline. And if you do have something that happens and you need to get like a word about what to really do or how dangerous it is, or you're scared about that, of course you can call 911 or get to a doctor, but you can call that 800 number and tell them what kind of pesticide it is, and they can help you as well. So know that, have access there again, when you have these labels, that 800 number is in there. Read that label, know where to find that information. It makes it very helpful. Okay, now something else that you want to have to be prepared if something goes wrong is a chemical spill kit. You want to have something like some kitty litter. I buy a jug kind of like this, just has kitty litter in it, and I keep it in my toolbox. Then I've got a dustpan and a broom, and if I were, say I had some chemicals sitting here and I was mixing it and this was to fall off and spill, or I just was to spill some on the ground for whatever reason, just an accident, you don't want to just leave that there, because especially if you're out in the street, because then when it rains, it's going to wash that product down into the storm drain. And like we talked about, that water, when it goes into the storm drain, that's not the same as when things go down the drain at home. When you pour something down the drain, or it goes down the toilet or the sink, that goes into the sewer. That's a sewage system. It's a closed system that goes all the way to the treatment plant, and they treat that water before they release it back out. Well, if you spill some of this direct product on the street and then you just leave it, it will eventually dry if nothing happens and it is allowed to sit there long enough. But what you're going to end up with is some real solid residue pesticide sitting right there. And the first time that it rains, that water's going to come down and it's going to wash that stuff into the storm drains, not the sewer. When it goes into the storm drains, that water goes directly into our streams and our creeks, our rivers, our ponds, our lakes. That water can go into a pond. Like in the neighborhood I live in, we have several ponds in our neighborhood. And if I were to do that and leave a lot of pesticide and it rained and it washed that pesticide into that pond, it could kill those fish. You could have a fish kill. And the fish are highly susceptible to pesticides. And almost every pesticide I use, I've read, has always said that fish are very susceptible to it. So you got to be careful. If you spill, now accidents happen. So that's why you want to be prepared for the worst possible case scenario. So what I do is I carry a spill kit. I carry a little bit of kitty litter. The reason I do kitty litter is because it's cheap. It comes in a container kind of like this, and it's easy to store. And if I need it, I can just undo it and just pour it out. There's other things. There's actually absorbent that you can buy. You can go to an auto parts store and buy a sack of absorbent that's made so that these are for like mechanics and they're working in the garage and they spill gas or oil on the concrete, you can put down absorbent. And the idea of whether it's kitty litter or it's absorbent, or even if you have some sand will work too. Doesn't work as well, but sand will work. You can put that on there and it will soak up or absorb this chemical. So what you want is you want to have enough on your vehicle that if you spill some of this, that you can pour it all over that. If you've got a puddle of it, you would want to take and pour it all the way around it to contain it. First you want to contain that spill, and then you want to cover it up to absorb all of the chemical, and let it sit there. Let it sit on it for just a little bit and then absorb it all up. Then you can take a broom and a dustpan, and you want to make sure that you're wearing safety goggles and some gloves, and you want to sweep that stuff up into a dustpan and very carefully throw it away into the trash, and then sweep it up thoroughly. So that way you can absorb, you can contain that spill, and then you can clean it up, and that's an environmentally safe way of taking care of it. And that pesticide won't just run off or sit there and then end up being washed away into the system. All right, so let's also talk about a chemical suit. Now, some applicators carry chem suits on the truck with them because of the kind of pesticide they use. So here again, it's very important that you read your labels and you understand what you're applying and what you're applying it for. So if you have to wear a chemical suit, if you're wearing something that you're using the type of equipment or the type of pesticides that require you to wear a chemical suit, then be sure that you keep those on your truck with you. Some of those are made that you can wash them and reuse them. Others are made where you just dispose of them and you use new. So I don't carry any chemicals, and I don't have the kind of equipment that requires me to wear a chemical suit. Just we do have to wear personal protective equipment, long sleeve shirt, hat, those kind of things. But I don't have to wear a chem suit, so I don't carry those on my truck. But what you got to do is you got to read your label, make sure you understand what's on that label and what you're applying, and if you do need a chem suit, then make sure that you use one. So, you want to read the label and know what to do if something goes wrong. So we talked about how to use a chemical spill kit, but you also want to know what to do for that particular pesticide if you were to get it in your eye or you were to inhale it or get it on your skin. Make sure that you read the label and you understand what to do if something goes wrong. Don't wait for something to go wrong and then try to find a label and then look it up on that label what to do, or to find the 800 number. Try to educate yourself before you use the pesticide. Plan on something going wrong. Look it up. Know what am I going to do, and have a plan in action. Have the things on your truck ready so that you can use in case something goes wrong. Have a plan in place in case something goes wrong. If you're not sure what to do if something goes wrong, or if you're not sure how dangerous a pesticide is, or if you need to wear a chem suit, or how to apply it, any of these things, if you're not 100% certain, if you don't know for sure, ask somebody, ask a professional, ask your certified applicator that you're working under, or ask the distributor that sells the product. Those guys are very knowledgeable about their products. But if you get a label and you're getting frustrated and you can't find the answer to what you're looking for, and you've tried and tried, or perhaps sometimes maybe you've even found an answer, but you're not sure if you really understand it. Am I understanding this right, or am I going to do it right? Make sure you ask. Find a professional. Ask them. Ask somebody that does know 100%, that they completely understand. And if you find somebody that's used this product and they've read the label and they understand it, they'll probably know right off their head. They can give you the answer. But if you have somebody that doesn't know, more than likely, and if they're a professional and they're in the field, they're going to say to you, I'm not sure. Let me look at the label and figure it out. So always ask questions. There's nothing wrong. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed in this field that if you don't understand something. I mean, think about it. Just this one label alone is 55 pages. These labels can be very complicated and hard to understand. And the terminology that's behind them, sometimes they'll say something like a broadcast spray. Well, if you don't understand the terminology and what that means by broadcast spray as opposed to a crack and crevice spray, then that really doesn't mean much to you. So don't be embarrassed. Don't be afraid to ask. It's always a good idea to ask questions. I myself, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I still go and I ask a lot of questions, especially if it's a new pesticide and I've not used it before. I'll read the label. I'll have, to the best of my knowledge and my ability, when I think I understand the label to the best of my ability, then I'll go and I'll find professionals that have used it before or have a really good understanding of it, and I'll ask them and I'll say, now here's how I understand that I can use this, or it's applied. Do you understand that too? And I want to get confirmation and make sure that I'm using something, especially if it's new and I've never used it before, so that I know I'm doing it right. So don't be embarrassed to ask for help. Don't be embarrassed to ask if this is the right product or I'm doing it the right way. Those are good questions to ask. It just means you're a professional. It just means that if you don't know, that you're going to find out. And that's something that in this industry that you need to be able to do. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer to it, you need to be able to say, you know, I don't know, but I can find out. There's nothing wrong with that. Customers are not going to be shocked or alarmed if you don't know the answer to all their questions. If you don't know, you can just simply tell them, you know, that's a great question. I'm not sure, but let me look it up or let me get a hold of somebody and I'll find out for you. And then give them an answer that you're 100% sure about, and an answer that's right and that they know that it's right. So whenever you're reading these labels, let's make sure that we understand what's going on. Make sure that you comprehend it well. And if you don't, just ask somebody and find out what the proper way is to use it. All right, let's talk about transporting pesticides. That's moving them from location to location, whether it's just when you bought them and you're bringing them back to the office, or whether you're just carrying them to the job with you. So the best way to transport pesticides is in the back of a truck, okay? So now, not like that, okay? This is not what I'm talking about transporting pesticides. So my truck has these lock boxes here, okay? And I can lock up my pesticides inside of those boxes. I would never carry pesticides back here, or even just like in a jug, a bucket or something. You would never want to do that. It's not legal, and if the inspector sees you do that, you're probably going to get into a lot of trouble. So don't do that, okay? Another thing is, what you don't want to do is you don't want to put the pesticides inside the truck. That's definitely not a good idea. If you get into a wreck and these pesticides spill in the truck, they can get on you or something, and that's a bad deal, okay? And you always want to keep the pesticides locked. So when my pesticides go inside of these lock boxes, they lock shut so that nobody can open them up unless we have the key. This is really important to keep pets and kids and just adults or curious people out of them, because if you have a pesticide on your truck and somebody gets into it, you're liable for that. Now, if I'm mixing pesticides, okay, say I was going to mix some of this on my tailgate, and if I'm here doing some mixing, I want to make sure that before I leave, that I lock all this up before I leave. So I don't want to leave some sitting out here and then go into a customer's house leaving any pesticides sitting out. So it's very important that whenever you're done mixing your pesticides, that you put them back and that you lock them up. Like I said, it's your responsibility to make sure that these are locked up and that they're safe, because if somebody gets into them, even if they're just curious and something happens, you're responsible for that. So make sure that you keep it locked up and that they're out of harm's way.